May 1945. Nazi Germany's surrender left thousands of tanks stranded across Europe, Panthers sabotaged, Tigers abandoned, Panzer IVs gutted for parts. The Allies faced a problem: scrap them, test them, or let them fight on in foreign wars. What happened to this steel army would shape the future of armored warfare, but almost nobody remembers the choices made next. Here is the untold story behind what really became of Hitler's tanks after the guns went silent. A Panther tank abandoned near the edge of a German village in early summer 1945 became more than just war debris. US ordnance engineers tasked with gathering technical intelligence selected this 45-ton machine for shipment across the Atlantic. The logistics alone were daunting. Moving a Panther required heavy tractors, reinforced rail cars, and careful inspection for hidden explosives. Once secured, it traveled by rail to a port, then by ship to Maryland's Aberdeen Proving Ground, where US engineers waited with measuring tapes and high-velocity guns. At Aberdeen, the Panther's long-barreled 75mm gun and sloped armor drew immediate interest. Engineers ran mobility trials, pushing the tank's road speed and testing its cross-country abilities. Ballistic teams fired American and British anti-tank rounds at the hull and turret, mapping penetration patterns and armor failures. Metallurgists analyzed the steel, noting brittle fractures caused by wartime shortages of key alloys. The drivetrain, already worn from months of combat, failed repeatedly during testing. Gearboxes overheated, final drives cracked under stress, and tracks shed links after rough runs. Each breakdown confirmed what field reports had hinted: the Panther's firepower and protection came at the cost of mechanical reliability. After months of trials, the battered tank was stripped for parts and scrapped. Its brief second life yielded reams of data for Allied designers. But the Panther itself ended as just another hulk in the yard, dismantled, studied, and ultimately erased. Its lessons were carried forward while the steel was melted down for peacetime industry. Tiger 131's journey began in North Africa, where British forces captured it near Medjez El Bab, Tunisia, in April 1943. Disabled by a jammed turret and abandoned by its crew, the tank was recovered by Major Douglas Lidderdale and his Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers team. After inspection by dignitaries in Tunisia, Tiger 131 was shipped to Britain, where it became a prized asset for technical analysis and public display. During the war and for years after, the tank remained in government hands, stripped for study and used as a reference piece for British armour specialists. Its original Maybach engine was removed and cut open for training, leaving the hull silent in storage. In September 1951, the Ministry of Supply formally transferred Tiger 131 to the Tank Museum at Bovington. For nearly 4 decades, it stood as a static exhibit, its mechanical systems frozen and its paintwork fading with time. The tank's fortunes changed in 1990, when the museum, working with Army Base Repair Organization engineers, began a complete restoration. The project required a new engine, sourced from a Tiger II in the collection, and a painstaking overhaul of the transmission, suspension, and hull. By December 2003, Tiger 131 ran under its own power for the first time in decades. Today, it remains the only operational original Tiger I in the world, maintained by dedicated curators and engineers. Its survival is a rare exception, a product of careful stewardship and technical dedication, standing in sharp contrast to the fate of nearly every other German heavy tank. Panzer IVs, the backbone of German armoured forces, followed a different path after the war. With over 8,500 built, they became the most widely available German tank for post-war reuse. While many ended up in scrapyards, hundreds found new owners abroad. France, Czechoslovakia, and Spain gathered surplus Panzer IVs from depots and abandoned columns, refurbishing them in local workshops. Mechanics stripped parts from derelict hulls to keep a handful running, often combining components from several tanks just to field one operational vehicle. By the early 1950s, Czechoslovakia and France began selling these reconditioned Panzer IVs to foreign buyers. Syria, seeking to bolster its armoured forces, purchased dozens of Panzer IVs, some arriving as late as 1965, freshly painted and fitted with spare parts cannibalized from others. Syrian maintenance crews learned to service these aging machines, adapting German manuals and improvising repairs to keep them battle-ready. On the Golan Heights, Panzer IVs faced Israeli Shermans and Centurions during the Six-Day War of 1967. Dug in as static gun positions or sent forward in armoured columns, they fired their 75mm guns across the border one last time. By the end of the fighting, most Syrian Panzer IVs lay destroyed or abandoned, their final chapters written far from the factories where they began. Even in defeat, these tanks outlasted their creators, serving new masters through decades of shifting alliances and conflict. In the aftermath of surrender, Allied Control Council Law No. 8 placed German tanks on the list of prohibited war material. Zonal commanders, American, British, Soviet, and French, received clear instructions. Armoured vehicles were to be destroyed, not preserved. Local occupation officials faced the practical realities of this policy. In the United States and British zones, salvage crews dragged Panthers, Tigers, and Panzer IVs from fields and forests to central depots. Engineers checked each hull for hidden charges or leftover ammunition, then classified the tanks for scrapping, range use, or rare exceptions such as technical study. Steel shortages shaped every decision. Europe's railways and bridges lay in ruins, and heavy industry demanded raw material. By 1946, scrapyards from the Ruhr to Silesia cut up tank hulls with acetylene torches, feeding melted steel into reconstruction projects. In Czechoslovakia and Poland, municipal scrap drives pulled derelict armor from rural roadsides, sometimes using hulls as fill for embankments or sea walls before final recycling. A fraction of tanks ended up as targets on Allied firing ranges. British gunners at Lulworth and American crews at Aberdeen practiced with live ammunition against German armor, mapping damage patterns and testing new rounds. The rest, thousands of tons, vanished into the blast furnaces of Bochum, Essen, and Magdeburg. By 1948, the overwhelming majority of German tanks had been dismantled, their steel reappearing as rails, girders, and factory machines. The deliberate, systematic destruction left almost nothing behind, erasing the material legacy of Hitler's armored fleet in favor of rebuilding a shattered continent. Technical reports from Allied proving grounds did more than document the weaknesses of German tanks. They shaped the design philosophy of a new generation of armored vehicles. At Aberdeen, Lulworth, and Kubinka, engineers pored over penetration diagrams and metallurgical samples, comparing the thick, sloped armor of Panthers and Tigers to the more practical layouts of their own fleets. Data from live fire trials showed that while German tanks could shrug off many Allied shells from the front, their sides and rear remained vulnerable, especially to higher velocity or shaped charge rounds. These findings fed directly into the blueprints of post-war tanks such as the American M48 Patton, the British Centurion, and the Soviet IS series. Designers balanced firepower and protection with reliability and ease of production, moving away from the mechanical complexity that had doomed so many German vehicles in the field. Cold War engineers studied not just the armor, but the consequences of over-engineering, especially for reliability. Panther and Tiger drivetrains, with their intricate gearboxes and heavy suspensions, became cautionary tales. Reports noted how brittle steel caused by wartime shortages of key alloys led to catastrophic failures under repeated stress. The lesson was clear. A tank that could not be maintained in combat was a liability, no matter how impressive its gun or armor appeared on paper. These insights echoed through design bureaus from Detroit to Nizhny Tagil, where teams weighed every improvement against the hard-won evidence from captured German machines. Yet even as these lessons shaped the future, the physical legacy of German tanks nearly vanished. By the early 1950s, only a handful escaped the torch. The Soviet collection at Kubinka became a reference library for generations of engineers, while museums in Britain, France, and the United States preserved rare survivors. Curators faced difficult choices. Space, funding, and public interest determined which hulks would be restored and which would disappear forever. Today, only a few dozen original Panthers, Tigers, and Panzer IV tanks remain on display worldwide. Each is a silent witness to the enormous scale of post-war destruction and to the technical debates that still echo in the halls of tank museums. For curators and historians, every surviving vehicle is not just a relic, but a critical artifact that connects the ambitions of wartime Germany to the realities of post-war innovation and memory. Today, only a handful of these tanks survive as silent reminders in museums, while most were erased by policy and progress. Yet their legacy shapes every debate on what societies do with the weapons of the past. History's steel never disappears. It just changes hands. Share your thoughts below.